We are excited to bring you this next session, Step into the Metaverse. Please welcome Rosa Ramos-Kwok, HITEC Vice Chair, and Alexander Fernandez, CEO, co-founder, Streamline Media Group.
Great. Hello, HITEC familia. How are all of you? I am so excited to be here today because we are stepping into the metaverse. And we are going to step into the metaverse with the one and only Alexander Fernandez. Let me tell you a little bit about Alexander, or he's going to let me call him Alex because we became fast friends before this session. So Alex is a HITEC member, and he is a Latino entrepreneur whose passion is building value between the video game and traditional enterprise industries. He has used that passion to help grow Streamline Media Group from a very small startup to a focus on gaming to a global business with over 180 employees in 3 continents and multiple brands under the Streamline Media Group umbrella. Alex is a frequent speaker at industry events and conventions worldwide. He addresses a number of topics related to entrepreneurship, outsourcing, game development, technology and non-gaming industries, and organizational design, amongst other topics. He has been published or quoted in multiple industry and trade magazines. He serves on the advisory board of Gamescom, is a member of the Forbes Business Council, and is the allyship chairman for Women in Games International. In 2020, Alex launched Video Games Real Talk, an award-winning podcast about the business of video games and the future of the industry. So I am so excited and delighted to be your host today. And so Alex, we usually start with a HITEC check-in. So I would love for you to fill in anything that I left out about your bio, anything that we want to know from you, and tell us where you're from.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you everyone for having me. And Rosa, thanks for being here and hanging out with me. So I'm Alexander Fernandez. Honestly, my mom is from Nicaragua. My dad's from El Salvador. I grew up in the United States, in Utah of all places. So we'll get to that in a second. I grew up Catholic, which was already a weird thing. Just in one of those things in Utah. I've been making and playing video games since I was 7 years old. Got a computer when I was 12 years old because my mom saved 9 months of salary and thought, hey, this will keep you out of trouble. And I think if you learn it, you might go somewhere. I grew up with migrant seasonal farm workers. So when you hear me speak Spanish, it'll sound like I am speaking farmer Spanish. That's what I know. And basically,
I don't know if I've ever heard farmer Spanish, but
you know what? It's I don't know if it's appropriate for me to start talking. I mean, when I come out to New York, I'll show you what I mean by this. This is I get pretty wild when I talk because for me, it's just one of those things where I can be very expressive in Spanish. Just put it from that way. But what it comes down to is basically that technology has been the one thing in my life that helped us get out. And I mean us. I have an identical twin brother who he's been in my life since I was born, so to speak. And it helped us get out of a poverty trap. First generation Hispanics, basically came in because of the war in Nicaragua and basically get our way through. Now, when we started Streamline 21 years ago, I was 20 years old. I moved to Amsterdam and basically decided to start a company with 4 friends. And that company now actually employs 250 people all over Southeast Asia, now here in the Americas and in Europe. So I'm very much a believer in the power of technology and its ability to change the social economic status of people. It's one of the reasons why I came back to the United States after living in overseas for 20 years. And specifically, my last mission was in Asia and in Malaysia, down in Kuala Lumpur. And I've come back here because I see an incredible amount of opportunity to basically work with Hispanics and people of color, as well as basically to bust open into Latin and South America. So that's what I do.
What a story. So you have a digital twin.
Yeah, and a physical twin. It's very funny.
Also, you have been in the metaverse for a long time.
Yeah, I was in the metaverse when we used to just call it like bulletin board systems. and MUDs. And I think this is something that I would put across to everyone here who's listening right now. We have an interesting way in technology and in the world to name something that's old and make it new again. So the metaverse is nothing more than the internet. Let's just be honest about it. And metaverse is a catch-all phrase. It is basically a series of business models, hardware, software, applications, all coming together in one place. It's what we really wanted the internet to be, except that the technology back in 93, 94 just wasn't there. But the excitement is the fact that it is 93, 94, and all of the opportunities that existed in that time frame are now existing today. So for all of us old timers or people who remember how to look at patterns, this is the most amazing and exciting opportunity to get into something because no one owns it. It is why I am so happy about this. I swear I've been waiting like half my life for this moment to come again. I used to have curly hair. Now it's gone. So this is like my courage here. It's, yeah, I know. I'm like, my daughter and my son took my hair. I look at that. I'm like, come on. It's like, but okay, it's a different story. But this is what's exciting about it. And, you know, the metaverse is nothing more than basically visualizing this technology. It's basically looking at what is your digital and physical persona becoming a unified reality. And I'm going to stop there because I know that might be kind of weird sounding, but yes, physical, digital, coming together, and it's all in one reality space for you.
So metaverse, internet, physical, virtual, coming together.
Correct.
What is the current state of it, and what are the kind of common applications that you would find in the metaverse?
Right. So here's the thing. So again, going back down to the idea of what's old is new. The metaverse has been here for a while. If you open up your phone and say, "Hey Siri, take me to Domino's," or, you know, take me to Shake Shack, that ability for it to pull all the metadata that it exists and represents a three-dimensional space called your city, your neighborhood, your barrio, wherever you are, that's the metaverse happening for you right there in real time. I don't believe, and I want to be very clear, the metaverse is not a place you go to with AR, VR. Those are input devices. Those are ways of experiencing something. It does not depend on those things. We're effectively making utility out of all the data and all the information that exists about each and every one of us, which is creepy because Web 2 was all about this, you know, surveillance capital and the stalker state watching you. And now the metaverse is basically you controlling your data, understanding your unified reality, getting utility from that, and then basically places for brands and businesses to interact and be able to immerse themselves with their consumer in a more meaningful relationship. One in which that's not based on me harvesting your data, one that's not based on me basically lurking around, but one in which we work together and we create new things. So this is also something that's very different, right? Where we get this idea of what's called user-generated content, or UGC, where the actual individual, in this case, the consumer, the user, is as instrumental as the company that's providing the experience to you. And I know this is hard because a lot of times we think, oh, things get served up to us. But if you really think of what the promise of the internet was and is, it's users and people like us just creating stuff and showcasing it. But it's stringing it together in a way in which we can actually interact and immerse ourselves in that, whether it's in immersive experiences that look like games, or basically simple as that map that I'm telling you about, you know, using your Siri. It's this type of understanding.
Great. So it's already around us. The metaverse sounds like, you know, we're already in the metaverse. So like, congratulations.
Yeah,
we're all here.
We're all here. Here you go. It's getting fantastic.
What are the like common applications that you see? Like, where and how is the metaverse being used?
So here's the thing, like the most easy way of looking at this is with brands, right? So brands have always been at the forefront of leveraging technology, whether it was basically the internet itself or basically film when Phil came out and you put basically in product branding. Brands have found a way to remain relevant to connect to young consumers by being where those consumers are. So a great example of basically this happening is just with recording stars. So like Ariana Grande basically being in, doing her concerts in Unreal, in Fortnite, I should say, using Unreal Engine. Basically, that was a great example of that. Or Balenciaga doing the fall 2021 fashion lineup that we did with them, where we brought effectively their entire line for the fall, streamed to 120 countries over 7 days using Unreal and basically taking you through the mind of the creative director. Or basically looking at companies like Roblox, who basically will sit there and put Gucci bags into Roblox, which is played primarily by kids and young adults, and having an item that costs 25 cents become now worth $5,000 within the span of 24 hours. So these are places where brands are understanding, and we're starting to basically toy around with, okay, there's actual value in digital content, which if we really think about that, shouldn't be a hard stretch, because what is intellectual property? Why do we do patents? Why do we do trademarks? Because they're ideas that have value. And now the value that comes from digital twins, that come from brands interacting and immersing themselves with their consumer, are now realizing, wait, together we can create even more value, more loyalty. Another example is loyalty. Using loyalty programs, which are nothing more than points or a form of currency, in order to trade for services and goods or new experiences that can only exist within these immersive experiences. That is also a great example of forward-thinking brands that realize, wait, if we add an NFT to it, or if we basically put some type of underlying blockchain component to it, we now basically can measure brand affinity and loyalty in a way that we were never able to do it before. So I'm going to stop there because it's I'll just keep going.
We're
sorry.
have questions on that. But
no worries.
We hear, and you mentioned this around AR, VR, and the internet is around us all the time. But like to my 90-year-old father-in-law, he kept hearing about what is the internet. And one day he said to my husband, his son, I'd like to experience it. So he's like, okay, Dad, I'll take you to the local library and I'll show you the internet, right? So he sits my 90-year-old father-in-law in front of a computer and says, here's the internet. And my father-in-law's like, okay, what do I do? How do I and he's like, Dad, you have to type. And he's like, oh, I need to know how to type? I need to do this. I need to click on this. He thought somehow he was going to sit and something was going to happen. So yes, the metaverse is all around us, but is there one? Is there several?
There's several. So
what is it? How do I interact with it?
So the thing is, what people I'm going to go back to when the internet first started. There were several different places you were going, right? Web 2 centralized a lot of the services that we came to know and love, but Web 1 was you had to know where you were going. You had to understand what you were looking for. And that's where niches came out, where anonymity was reigning supreme. But ultimately what ends up happening here is that the metaverse is a series of different sites and different locations. There is no one metaverse. And the idea that a company or a series of companies are going to somehow create their own, that's the fallacy of Web 2, thinking I have to control this. The reality is people don't want to go to one place. They want to have interoperability. They want to have basically conversion, exchange between different experiences. So ultimately what ends up happening here is that when you look at basically the big tech companies today that would love to say, hey, you know what, we're going to own this. Well, if they're smart, they're going to own the infrastructure, but they're not going to push the experience, right? They will basically provide the tools. They'll provide the vehicles to get there to different experiences that are owned and created by other brands or other businesses that are basically looking to do the same thing, but not necessarily in a way that says I'm not going to go to Meta, companies that rebrand themselves into something kind of that shit that the boat sailed. You're going to go to do what you want to do with people that you trust. And I think this is one of those things where it just comes down to a simple thing that ultimately brands themselves become the destination because of the way we are. I'm wearing an Adidas jacket right now. This brand understands it already. They get it immediately. But you know what? They understood it when basically they decided to let Run DMC sing about their shoes, even though they didn't want that. But that happened anyway. That's what I'm talking about. User-generated content, pushing the brand, leveraging technologies. That's why it can't be controlled by companies, not from ones that basically aren't used to basically having a bidirectional conversation. You can't tell me what to do. I'll tell you what I want to do. So that's also a part of it that starts to change over in terms of the conversation piece. So I think ultimately, when we talk about basically this open metaverse, which is happening right now, there's standards being laid down. It's because these brands and these businesses understand, look, no one person's going to own it, no one entity. It's going to be shared and we're going to connect it together.
And there's not going to be one way to interact. So we're not all going to walk around with headsets and all these things all the time.
Look, man, there are people that want that. One day I'll put a wire in my head. I don't know why you would do that, but you know what? Some people like that idea. I don't. But the reality is there's many ways to do it. Right now, there's many ways to surf the internet through your voice, through your cell phone, through your PlayStation, through your computer. Just think about all the ways we're now meeting. Look at this. We have Zoom and we have Teams and we have a phone call and we have FaceTime. So many ways to access the same content.
So just like my father-in-law was trying to like figure out like what skills he needed, and he didn't realize he needed skills to at least type, to interact with the internet. Yeah. But what skills do you need to have when engaging in the metaverse?
So if you look at it from a consumer perspective, and I think this is probably the best part to do, go play with a kid. Go play with a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 17-year-old, a 20-year-old. Go play Fortnite, go play Roblox, go play a game. And honestly, that's the first thing you know. You just need to know how to interact in a three-dimensional space. That's a great way to see how people are doing it and effectively understanding it and experiencing it as a consumer, right? If we're talking about skills to be a part of the people who build it, also go play a game. And then realize that game design, interaction design, UI, UX, engineering, that's all part of this. But moreover, go to the soft skills, because the metaverse, to be very blunt, is content, which means we're talking about the humanities. We're talking about art, right? Yeah. We're not just talking about science, technology, engineering, and math. We're also talking about art. So now it becomes STEAM. So now what we're talking about is, how do we have language? How do we express music? How do we express color? How do I do a experience where you believe you're somewhere that you're not? Suspension of disbelief. That's what is also very beautiful about this, because ultimately we're now merging two worlds that have always been one world, but we like to say right brain, left brain, which is just a fallacy by itself. Now we're saying whole human. So the metaverse is whole human. It needs all of it to be created, right? Not just the engineering, you also need the art, you also need the culture, you need the music, you need the language. So for me, honestly, you have your hard skills, which is what you know how to do, the hard, my math, my engineering, my science, and my art. And then I have my soft skills, which are my communication, my ability to network, my ability to convince. That is also the other part of it. And I think that is going to be the biggest part here, because this right here, this is not AI. This is a human being. And that's the best part about it.
I love the whole human that it's.
Yeah, it's the whole human. It's very Greek. It's like was it 1500 years ago? It's like, oh, look, we're all of a sudden very philosophical now.
Great. So when we think about a lot of other things that are going on in this kind of space, blockchain, crypto, you mentioned NFTs, like how do those factor into the metaverse long term?
Yeah, so there's always a controversy about these things, but let's first start off with the basics, that these technologies at their starting point aren't necessarily what they're going to be when they're fully mature. So this is the key. It's like, I know people are like, oh, the scamming, the this or that, NFTs, what a waste of money. But you have to look at beyond how it exists today and look at it, what it means from a cultural perspective. It's being part of a social club. It's validation and verification of a niche. And then you look at the utility from a standpoint of it has a value, whether you believe in the value or not, but it doesn't matter, because if other people do, then it must have something, right?
The other side of
yeah, well, exactly, right? Then the other side on this too is basically chain of custody, which I love about blockchain. Smart contracts, the ability to not have to depend on lawyers for that, right? These are things that come into play that allow us to facilitate transactions in a trustless world, which, let's be honest, that's what the world seems to be like these days. So we're trying to find ways around that. Ultimately, in the end of the day, the metaverse is looking to leverage these technologies in order to basically have ownership on some points, value creation and other points, a common language to exchange between each other, and not just not from just a economic value perspective, but being able just to trade things to each other and say, hey, proof that I've given it to you. Those are items that are there. I think ultimately in the end, when we start getting forward to another place of where it goes, is that brands themselves begin to realize those loyalty points, that currency means something. And that their communities that are niche of niche of niche, the 1,000 rabid fans who will literally go stand in line for those sneakers and pay thousands of dollars, that is who they want. It's not the tourists, it's the natives, it's the local. That is what this technology allows you to enable. And instead of it being within a geographic location, the entire world is that location, which means I'll find 1,000 fans anywhere in the world, not just down in Brooklyn. That's the difference. And I think that's the thing that we have to start to think about. So we have to scale out our mindset where proximity, physical proximity, is not where I am. It's basically global. My brain and consciousness is able to understand it because the technologies make it possible for me to throw that consciousness somewhere else, then connect, bring them in, transact, and have trust. That is what's happening. And I know, again, it's crazy because it's like, what the hell is this?
Transcendental, metaphysical.
It really, but you know what? You think about what's culture. Like you think about this right now, this HITEC, right? We're all Hispanic. Most of the people here are somehow related to it. We're identifying with a language, a culture, and we're all together in a group because we also have a niche of a niche. We like technology. But it's taking this within our own currency, our own ability to trade, our own ability to exist. This is what effectively the metaverse will provide and is providing, and what these blockchain NFTs are also providing. It's validation, which is what people want.
So we are already getting audience questions.
Oh, yeah.
One other topic area that I wanted to delve into, but please get other questions going because I'm going to go to that next. So I do want to talk a little bit about ethics and, how is the metaverse the great equalizer?
Yeah.
And what is your view on that?
So I think where it is basically this. It's a great equalizer because right now no one owns it. And so I go back to 93, 94. If all of us could have gone in there and started building stuff, a lot of us would have made it big. And we would be able to control and wield these new instruments, these new systems that basically create value and make job creation possible. We're having that opportunity now, except now it's happening all over the world in places like Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa, where the knowledge is there, the know-how is there, the population is there. So that gives people the opportunity to get on board into the global economy that isn't based on, well, I'm in Silicon Valley, and if I'm not here, I'm nowhere, right? So I can now participate globally on this and find my way in. The other side on this as well is it's not because it's not
globalization,
true globalization all at the same time, right? The race started, we're all actually on the starting line, not 10 meters back. Fantastic. At the same time, though, we're also in a situation where because no one really knows what it is, it means that we can do whatever we want with it and define it in any which way. So it all comes down to the creativity, our technology prowess, our ability to work and relate with each other. That is a great equalizer. And what it also does for the Web 2 companies, it starts to break this surveillance capital, this kind of creep mode that's been out there that honestly, nobody likes a creep. Nobody. And we don't need lurkers. We don't need creeps. We don't need to trade information for BS services. That is really what I think is extremely important here. So when we get to the ethics of the metaverse, there's some things that we don't need to do. Web 2 doesn't need to go to Web 3. It just doesn't. It just needs to die. And we move over to the next thing. Or, for people that want to trade on that, that's fine. There's also one other thing that I think is important here, is that the metaverse, Web 3, and the business models that come from it, things like play to earn. You have two types of capital in life. You have actual currency, you have time. Both have a value. If I'm in a place where I only have time because I don't have any money, I should have the ability to come in and effectively still participate and build value based on my time. We call that sweat equity when we do startups, right? But it's the same thing when we're playing games that actually have NFTs or some form of cryptocurrency. The flip side is if I'm so rich that, my time is precious to me and I'm willing to pay for it, well, that's how I participate economically speaking. I just pay for that because that's my opportunity. This finally gives both ends. Yes. So both of us can now come in and play. And that is another equalizer there. Whereas before, that wasn't going to happen. You were just going to slave away because you had no choice. Whereas I will buy whatever I want because I have all the cash. That's another aspect of it. Now I'll stop it.
So how about individuals with different abilities? So what if I'm visually impaired or hard of hearing, or I have differences, or I'm wheelchair bound? That's very good.
Yeah, no. So check this out. I can speak from the gaming perspective. So accessibility in video games is a big thing. I mean, we spend millions trying to figure this out, how to get visually impaired, limb impaired, people with disabilities, and they play because games, it connects people. They want to have fun. Everybody wants to play a game, whether they admit it or not, it's a different story, but people want to play. And that type of innovations that were coming from that space is bleeding into the metaverse, into high technology. So this idea that you have to somehow be able, fully abled, that's going out the window too, because this is also what I love about it. In the metaverse, it doesn't matter what you look like, what you sound like, what you can and cannot do, because you're represented by whatever you choose to be, which is something that I think is extremely important for people to understand, is that right now we see each other like this. You see me as a human being and I'm here talking to you, and whatever I look like, that's what I look like. But there are things like in Microsoft Teams that are coming out with avatars where you can choose to be whatever you want to be. And if you think about that from what they're effectively doing with that type of platform, you begin to realize that people will be representing based on their true self, their true belief of what they are. And if I want to be a floating cow cup, well, that's who I am now. This is really what I love about this.
That's awesome. So a couple of things, like, in terms of like do's and don'ts of engagement, I know that, many businesses are already starting there. I think when we were talking before, I mentioned that JP Morgan Chase has a lounge in Metajuku in Decentraland. And if you're interested, I showed this, we have this paper, opportunities in the metaverse, if you're interested in reading that. And I think you also put a podcast out there as well. That is very informational, but like, where do you start? What are some of the do's and don'ts? And then we'll get to questions.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is basically this, is that first, don't be a creep. And just I'm gonna be very honest with you, like no creep mode. Just turn the creepiness off, right? That's the first thing in there. I think the other thing is basically you have to be willing as a brand or as a company to accept the engagement of your customer in a way that you've never had before, where it's not them just kind of lightly suggesting to you, they're actually touching your content and making stuff from it. So user-generated content, that's the game. You're saying, here are all these little toys, like little scrapbook pieces, make something. And you're fine with that. And being like, that's cool. We're going to go ahead and support you and go one to the next step up there. The other side is that you have to understand the limitation of technology. Let me be very clear. This is not push button and then metaverse pops out. Let me go ahead and make it very clear. It's just like 93, 94. There's an ugly ass web browser. It's purple links, gray backgrounds. Most of it's text. And that's where you start. Then 30 years later, oh my gosh, it's amazing. We'll compress that time in 10 years, but understand and be realistic about the technology and limitations of what it can and cannot do. It is not going to turn, water into wine, at least not yet. But we need to be realistic about that. So like, please, my enthusiasm should not make you think, oh, I'm going to go out there and no, you're not. You're not. It's just going to take time. So let's be honest about that, right? So I think those are three things that people should really keep in mind.
Thank you. So we have a lot of audience questions. Okay. So I'm going to go to that. So the first one is, Alex, you claim that Metaverse will dominate the industry in almost the same proportion as gaming. If true, what are the top things we as Hispanic leaders need to start focusing on, both business and day-to-day aspects?
Okay, so here's the thing. The video games industry is a $200 billion industry. The economy is trillions of dollars. The metaverse opportunity is trillions of dollars because we're talking about digital transformation of industry by leveraging video game technology. So let me be clear. It's the leveraging of video game technology, video game competencies, the understanding of how to create suspension of disbelief, immersive interactive experiences, connecting to technology. That is what this is. We're not making video games that happen to be a storefront. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm looking at here is basically this is an understanding that because of the way consumers are now, the way this generation is, and again, go look at someone who's 15. They woke up, the internet was always there. Mobile web was always there. Everything is just there. Whereas me, I didn't even have a cell phone. I was on a tethered line and I had a rotary number in my living room. So, I'm like, whoa, what's this? I remember that. Yeah. So this is something where, because we have the limitation and as a generation, and that generation has zero, they experience life differently. They understand things differently. So as entrepreneurs, what we have to understand is, where do we make our money? Are we basically making money on the older generation that is rotary, being like, oh, they still, they call me on that line? Or are we trying to get these 15-year-olds to start buying from us because, you know what, they have disposable income and they'll have income for the next 50 years. And I kind of want that money. So from there, we got to understand our demographic. And then we have to understand not everything has to become metaverse or in that craziness. It's not everything's appropriate in that level. But we do have to understand something. And I go, let's go back to 93, 94. I come up to you and I say, hey, you know what? You should put your business on this thing called the World Wide Web, the information superhighway. Because if you don't own yourbusiness.com, you won't even exist. You'll be like, okay, crazy boy, never going to happen.
Yeah. And
then 2002 comes and you're like, oh my God, I don't own my domain. I don't exist. That's what I want everyone to think about.
Or it's going to cost you.
Or it's going to, you're going to go buy $500,000. So that is something I want everyone here to understand, is that it's not a case of future fantastic. Just look at what's already happened and understand it's happening again. And you just need to be part of the loop. So I hope that answers that question there. But I do want one thing, just one last thing on this is Hispanic businesses. Understand that basically you're not just selling to Hispanics, we're selling to everyone around the world, and the ability to connect using our culture and who we are to all of these different societies is fantastic. It will just, it's exponential. And that I can tell you.
Yeah. So this next one is a good one. How do you see privacy laws and information security in this area? Do you have any concerns of exposing young children to the metaverse?
Yeah, so I actually have a 2-year-old and I have a 7-year-old, and I am all about the privacy, and I don't want my kids being exposed to weirdness. But then again, we also see things like Sesame Street, and we have Lego. They're creating their own worlds in partnership with Epic Games to bring age-appropriate content for children. So on that level, I know we're going to solve this forward. And if anything, the privacy laws will get stronger so that Web 2 is basically this dark period of time where we're like, that was a stupid idea to trade our privacy for comments and likes. That, I think, is what that will break. It's just by nature where it's breaking right now. But I think for all adults out there, for people with kids, pay attention to what your kids are doing. You kind of have to be engaged. So you put the blockers on I do this, I'm lame. I block on their iPad, on their device, on their Nintendo Switch. I'm watching it because I understand.
You have to be an engaged parent.
Yeah, we have to, this is not like, go play with the manguera and hopefully nothing happens to you. It's like the manguera can say stuff back to you. I don't want that to happen to my kids. So you got to be engaged. That's the key on that.
Okay, so you reference a niche in NFTs. How can that correspond within the metaverse? Right.
So what I love about NFTs is that it's like basically the password to a secret society. You think about it from this perspective. So let's say that I'm in the Cal cult right here, right? And I have, we all know, we all went to school or, support some fan. We're part of something, right? The NFT that gets me into the actual club. I don't have to say anything, where it's proof of membership based on the wallet that you scan and says, you can only come to this if you can show me through your wallet that you're a part of it. It's that level of exclusivity and access, but then it's the utility that comes from the actual organizations that are leveraging it, right? So if you haven't gone and looked at the Bored Apes, you need to just go look at Bored Ape Yacht Club, go look at it. I'm not telling you to buy it. I'm telling you to look at it. Look at it because it's important to understand how they took drawings of monkeys or apes and turned it into almost a cultish following that then began to basically spawn businesses of all types leveraging art in order to create an actual understanding of user base, community, fans, and basically consumers. This is the cleverness about how NFTs work in a niche. It just so happened people like this niche, but then expand it to everything else. Look at that, and that's where you'll start to understand what I mean by this.
Do you think the future of gaming will have an aspect of playing to earn?
I think, yes, it's already doing that. I mean, I come from an industry that basically, we make toys for rich kids. Let me be very frank with you. The video games industry is great if you have money. It is a money industry. What is unfortunate is that if you don't have money, you can look at it from the wayside and dream of one day playing. What Play to Earn allows you to do now is basically open it up to the people who do not have money. Think of what I said about your time. Your time being rewarded with something of value, which if you really think about this, you only have nothing to do with your time. Your time has no value if you have money. And let me not mean that in a really kind of sarcastic way, but think about it. I can choose to waste my time, whereas a lot of people can't. So absolutely, this is coming into play. And this is what we're seeing in the industry. And that's why there's a big controversy in games. But that's also the best part about it, because all the business owners are like, yeah, let's do that because it makes sense for us. So, I mean, it's all right.
We're talking about being equal.
It's all about the Benjamins right there. Let's just be honest about that too. So
how do you think moderation will work in the metaverse to prevent users abusing the system and each other?
Yeah, so I think what that comes down to, here's the beautiful thing about it. It means that anonymity goes out the window because I know your wallet. And if you're a hater, I can track all your hate and I know that's you. So I think this is really what it comes down to. Whereas Web 2 was basically about your data being traded and you had a username and a password, but you were being moderated by a platform. Web 3 is like, I know you're filled with hate and I don't need to basically see you. I think that is really what ends up happening here. And people are going to be very surprised about how basically, like, you read about like, oh, all this crypto is being stolen. We don't have no idea. It's not safe. Yeah, but the next line is, we know where the money is because we can see it. We see the wallet. So it's not like it's disappearing. We know where it is. This is also what's going to happen with what people say and do. And I think at that point, it just moderates people. And of course, there's always going to be an idiot out there that doesn't care. Well, then that society will take care of that person like it usually does.
I'm going to combine the next question with another question, which is, which NFT project do you recommend?
Ooh, I can't say anything on that. I listen, you know what NFT project I recommend is the one that you research and that you believe in and that you think is good for you. Because look, here's the thing on this. If you're going in there to play this because you think you're going to get quick rich, let me tell you, that's the stupidest way to make money and you'll lose all of it. So don't. The thing is, you need to understand what you're getting into and you have to like it. If you don't do it. I mean, honestly, like we're not rolling dice here. Or better yet, give me your money. I'll go put it on black and I'll tell you if you won. I live in Vegas, so let me know.
It's still, you still have to educate yourself.
You do, yes.
What you're investing in, why you're investing in it.
100%.
Doesn't take anything away just because
100%.
It's popular these days.
Well, yeah, you have, if anything, because it's popular, it's even stupider. It's like, the level of stupid goes up with the level of access and popularity. And then the higher that gets, the worse time to do it. So educate yourself, read about it, like it, really feel that I am a part of the community because I like the community, not because I think I'm also going to become rich tomorrow, because chances are you won't. And that's okay. So you should have liked it.
So one question that I want to ask, and then we'll go to the next one, which is, can you share how your company can help businesses build their presence in the metaverse?
Sure. So we do a lot of consulting now for companies of all types and sizes that are trying to understand how to basically engage in a metaverse strategy, a combination of crypto holdings, land holdings, special projects, and NFT integrations. And then, of course, because we are a games company, how to basically connect it and construct an immersive experience. We sit down and we help people understand, connect it to their KPIs and to where they're going as an organization, and then hopefully understand, is this just a cash grab or do you actually want to do this? Because those are two different things. Like if this is just, let me ride the wave, don't do it. But if it's because you really know this is where your consumer is going or you have a hunch about it, we talk about it and we'll figure it out and we can work together.
Part of a brand strategy, right? Like it should be.
It's innovation, right? It's brand strategy, but it's also, it is the next step of your business. It's the difference of, again, it's 94.95. We do everything with typewriters and letters. What do you mean by email? Website? What's this? Yeah. So think about that. So if you believe the future is going to happen, whether you like it or not, probably should start doing it. But if you believe no, yeah, it's evolution and it's creative destruction. So get ready to destroy yourself in the process to become something better. That's also what happens.
Okay. Any particular cybersecurity tech that becomes more critical in the metaverse? Identity.
It's all about identity. Identity, it's also basically always about where you're located. There are these things that are very finite about who you are, where you are, access to certain materials. All of that becomes extremely important. And of course, because it's all web-based and it's all cloud-based, knowing whoever you're working with knows what they're talking about and that there aren't these security issues that are coming in there. So when you start going towards blockchain, like I'm sure you guys have all heard about this hack that happened with Axie Infinity, $650 million worth of their cryptocurrency was quote unquote stolen, not stolen, just moved into someone else's wallet. We know where it's at, but no one can access it, type of thing like that. It's understanding that in a trustless world, in a token world, stupid things can still happen because we think for what is fast and easy, we forget to be rigorous and to perform our checklist. And that hack was as simple as someone forgetting to turn off an access feature. That's how sad that is. So we got to be more, let's say, filled with more intent and basically very cautious about what we do.
Go in with eyes wide open.
Exactly.
So I had a question yesterday during the networking session that I attended. room 6. I mentioned we were having this session and I got some questions from them. So one of them was, we have a habit of overall, like humankind has a habit of building things without thinking about the impact.
Yeah.
Things like social media and things that we've seen. Like, what are some of the lessons learned? Are those being incorporated into how we think of the metaverse?
Yeah, they are. They are. And it's coming from a standpoint that I think a lot of us have basically come to a realization that, again, access to data, to personal data, that should never be a currency. That shouldn't be something that people by default trade by terms and services. And I keep coming back to this. I'm not trying to hate on those companies, but it's just really think about what we've just experienced over the past 5 years. That's a direct correlation and consequence that comes in because we traded for something we didn't understand and it went the wrong way. So I think the flip side on this is also something where when we're building, especially something as pervasive and something that will be all consuming as the metaverse and the way immersive experiences work, it's extremely important for us to keep the humanity in there and realize that I love capitalism, but capitalism regulated. That is the biggest thing that I think we learned from Web 2. There's regulation that needs to be there. Because if you let people do, quote unquote, what is, it's all about innovation and blah, blah, they will do what's in their own interest, which has nothing to do with innovation and has everything to do with people dominating. And we just can't do that. It just doesn't work. Like, let's trust the fact that we're flawed as human beings. We are flawed. That's the point of being human. So let's, do our best to prevent it from turning into an absolute shit show. So
okay. We have 5 minutes left. I have another question. We'll be able to look how we want, but we will be essentially more transparent in the way, but will we be more transparent in the way we are perceived? If we jump on the metaverse train, are we exposed?
You're only as exposed as you basically allow yourself to be. So here is the thing. Like everything in life, you yourself have responsibility, personal responsibility of the level of access and exposure that you want to take. So I'll be clear, not everyone's going to want to do this. Some people will still do this. I mean, I'm happy to do. I like myself, so I'm happy to see myself. I'm arrogant enough to do that. Some people don't. You know what I mean? And it's like, this is something where it's a choice. It's an individual choice. It's a personal choice. At the same time, as work goes remote, as your job forces you to go to the metaverse, you have to understand, well, what does that mean for yourself as an individual and what level of interaction do you want to have? I think when it comes for people of color, Hispanics, diversity, anyone who feels basically segmented from the, I say, homogenous group, we have to be smart. We have to understand that it's like, things happen. And that's also the reason why we have to build it and own it too. So when I go back to basically being the equalizer, it's equal if we own it or we have a piece of it or we have the patent behind it, not that we're the labor. So if there's one thing that I can tell you here, it's like, own it.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that within HITEC right around. You want to be the maker, right? Not
yes, you want to be the maker.
You want to be the maker as well. And that's where our community has to show up.
Absolutely.
Understand these things. And people like you who are educating our community around this and spreading the word. And you are the subject matter expert, right? So
yeah.
Which is your gem for us. So
well, that's very kind of you. I think the one thing I would say on this is, and this is for everyone out there, fame is fleeting. Who cares to be famous when you can own everything? That's the thing to think about it from that standpoint. It's like you can either be the talent or you can be the owner. Let me tell you which one lasts longer, because that is the key on this. So you think about this, we're great at a million different things, but once you own it, you understand how the system works, you know how to package it, how to recreate it, you have a machine that lasts forever. And that's that level of thinking. It's like, think of it as a system design, system thinking. Don't be the person who just knows how to push the button, be the person who created the entire system and then connect it to something else. Once you do that, you can do whatever the hell you want.
That's phenomenal. So how, apart from everything we just talked about, is there going to be some Latin flavor in the metaverse?
Yeah, there definitely is, actually. There's a lot of it, actually. It's funny how much it spreads. I mean, we have some stuff going on right now. I can't get into the details, but it's funny how much Latin flavor, Latin culture, how much who we are inherently is literally the lubrication for the metaverse. Because without this, and just think about who we are as people, like, not to use a stereotype, but let's use that for a moment. Fun, communicative, you never have a bored time with them. Que siga la rumba, that's what we are. You put that in and it never stops, but then you funnel it to ensure that where it goes, your hand is always there, taking your tax, taking your piece. That's what we talk about. So it's not just about the charm and the entertainment, the fun and the laughs, but it's also about the utility and breaking it down. So there's stuff that's coming out there specifically from a country level and from a industry level that I think will surprise a lot of people, just how much this is. And it's coming from Latinos, it's coming from Latin America, and then it's mixing with Southeast Asia. So you get the South by South thing going on. So I would just be like this. If I'm a betting person, I would be betting on the global South, because that's where all the kids are. And that's what's just going to change everything.
Alex, thank you so much. I've learned so much. It was phenomenal meeting you, having a conversation, and going and stepping into the metaverse with you. So thank you for your time. I hope you come again. Yeah.
No, I loved it. I mean, thank you for everyone out there. And just again, own it. Please own it. Don't be the labor. You need to own.
Own it. Own it. Own it.
Own it. Very much so. Thank you for having me.
Adios
Have a good one.
todos.
Ciao.
Gracias.